A little over a year after its initial PlayStation and PC release, Ghostwire Tokyo is coming to Xbox. This title from Tango Gameworks is a mix of horror and action set in a near-future Tokyo which has been taken over by evil spirits known as visitors. Ghostwire is a mix of spooky sights, terrifying sounds, and fast-paced combat, all from a first-person perspective that is available day one in Game Pass. It's time to weave some wind, pound some ground to determine if the not-quite horror, not-quite action approach is a winning combo or not, in our XboxEra review of Ghostwire Tokyo. You play as a lone survivor named Akito, trying to save his sister and the local population, who have all vanished. An angry old grump of a spirit named KK offers you a number of psychic powers to save as many people as possible. Unlike the studio's previous efforts, The Evil Within, Ghostwire Tokyo is an all-out action game. That isn't to say that the game is lacking in creepiness or scares, of course. The visitor enemy spirits are a macabre group pulled from the area's mythos. The story isn't the deepest, but it is effective in pushing things forward at a steady pace. I played the majority of my time with default Japanese voiceovers, though the English dub is passable enough. But the area and the story are so steeped in Japanese culture that it just felt right to play in the dev's native language. Ghostwire Tokyo will take most between 10 and 15 hours to finish, depending on how much side content you want to complete. This is a map game with plenty of icons to follow as you slowly liberate Japan of its murderous fog blanket. To access more areas, you'll need to cleanse shrines, which means dispatching the enemies around them and then holding your wrists at unbelievably uncomfortable angles while you hold each trigger. Side missions tend to be quick combat encounters to appease a local spirit, though a few here and there have full areas and story arcs that make them well worth checking out. This all feeds into the upgrade and purchase systems. Akito and KK have a sync level, which is the main experience gaining mechanic. As you complete tasks and defeat enemies, you'll earn skill points that unlock a variety of base abilities, more powerful attacks, and inventory upgrades. There are 3 weaving types for your attacks. Wind. This starts as a series of fast-moving attacks that you can charge into a powerful barrage of orbs. Upgrades add more damage and different variants, with all of them being denoted by their green color. Like all of the attacks, you will need ether to power your wind attacks, and your pool for these is the biggest out of the 3. Next up is water. This is your close-range shotgun-style attack. The base ability shoots out a short-range burst of powerful water, and when charged up, you get a huge arc of mid-range damage that is probably my favorite attack in the game. You start out with a max ether count of only 10 for this one, which is under half of what you get for wind. Fire. The last and most powerful weaving attack type is the toughest to hit with. Fire's base attack is just a straight burst with a slight drop. Charged up, you get a huge attack orb with a massive direct and smaller splash damage effect. When upgraded, it becomes extremely deadly, but this is balanced by how few fire attacks you can do at a time. Akito will also gain a bow early on, which deals massive damage to visitors when fully drawn. There is some heavy drop to it though, and ammo is in short supply most of the time, so make sure you aim true if you're able to master the finicky controls. The game's controls just ended up always feeling off to me on both mouse and controller. Options such as dead zone settings, aim acceleration, and more are here. Still, even after a long time tweaking them, the game just always felt that little bit off. To help with this on controller, you can use the left trigger as an aim assist. Whenever you're near an enemy or a particular target you want to hit, a push of the left trigger will snap you to it as well as move with the enemies as long as you hold it. It is serviceable in the end on both console and PC, but it never felt great due to performance issues, which we'll get into in the next section. Right trigger is your main attack, which you'll choose with right bumper. Outside of spells and arrows, you also have talismans that can offer up things like extra cover and the ability to stun enemies and more. While you can smash objects in the environment to refill your ether, you'll mostly refill your arrows and talismans at the in-game stores. To buy them, you'll need mecha, which is earned through side quests and found around the game's levels. Another item you'll need a lot of are paper cutouts that allow you to capture the various spirits that are stuck floating in the city. Capturing these human spirits and depositing them in a unique way nets you massive amounts of experience. The early combat takes a little bit too long to get to the more dynamic parts of it, and the first few hours of your playthrough will become increasingly repetitive until you've earned enough skill points to unlock the much cooler abilities. My advice would be to focus on unlocking new abilities first before you focus on spell upgrades or inventory unlocks. One of the game's coolest abilities is the Tengu Pull, where the flying demons will yank you up by your spirit tether, adding a ton of verticality to the title. And don't worry about fall damage, as I don't think there is any. And you can hold A while in the air to glide for a short period of time. You will be fighting the same mobs in similar looking areas a lot, and if the game was any longer, it would have become far too much for me to want to finish. Even though my first playthrough only took about 11 hours, I was starting to feel a bit of combat fatigue halfway through. The unlocks did enough to keep me invested, but the main loop of doing enough damage to a spirit to expose its core, then holding left trigger to either grab it up close or yank it from afar never really changed. Ghostwire Tokyo has some incredible looking environments and particle effects. Character models and animations are not of the same high level, with dead-looking eyes and stiff animations everywhere. It is also all hurt by how terribly the game performs on all but a few settings. There are a lot of them, and here they are. You've got Quality, which is a 30 FPS target with ray tracing enabled. Performance, which targets 60 FPS but no ray tracing and lower overall graphical fidelity than Quality. High frame rate Quality, which is lower than Performance, quality-wise, but it unlocks the frame rate target. Then there's High Frame Rate Performance, which is even lower fidelity than High Frame Rate Quality, with an aim on higher relative frame rate. Then they also have High Frame Rate Quality with VSync on and High Frame Rate Performance with the VSync on. This is for non-variable rate refresh displays, just in case you're stuck at 60 and you want to hold it there as much as you can. It's a lot, and the only consistent one for me was High Frame Rate Performance with VSync on. The game has a lot of particle effects, and even on my decent PC rig, it has a lot of frame rate drops in certain areas and combat situations. It can be maddening on PC as well with the shader compilation stutter. The Windows Store port is better than most, outside of the performance issues which plagued me on Steam back at launch as well. Outside of the open world repetition, this is the game's biggest flaw. No matter where I've played the game on Series X, PS5, or PC, I always get frame rate drops. And it's a shame, as the city in this game is stunning to look at. And I normally hate photo modes in games, as they give a false sense of what that game actually looks like. So every image in my written article is straight from the gameplay, and I think it looks fantastic overall. Every one of Tango's games has looked so damn different from the last. Going from The Evil Within to this and then to Hi-Fi Rush has just shown how much talent the studio's artists have. Sound-wise, the music sets the mood well, and there is a lot of it. The sound effects, especially from the visitors, are an eerie cacophony. Giggling schoolgirls, angry businessmen, dog barks, cat meows, and more filling the air at all times. Alongside a few new areas and abilities that I won't spoil, the game features a new run-based mode as well, dubbed Spider's Thread. You will slowly work your way through 30 levels of increasingly difficult encounters. The mode unlocks once you've completed Act 2, and it's a lot of fun. You'll lose all of your main campaign upgrades and unlocks. Slowly but surely, you'll get them all back again in a very different looking UI, but it's full of all the same moves. Unlocks persist through runs, but any money earned or consumables purchased will not. If you're returning to the game after beating the campaign on PS5 or PC last year, expect a lot of the same combat, but a whole new, very similar overall progression system to go through. It's fun and worth seeing through to its conclusion, but it's almost entirely made of reused assets and abilities. Our reviewer Harmonica also played through most of the game as well, so this section upcoming is all written by him. Tokyo is like nowhere else on Earth. The juxtaposition of the ancient and the ultra-modern sitting together side by side has to be experienced to be believed. Wandering off a neon-lit main street into the courtyard of a temple is akin to walking into another world, with the sound of passing traffic seeming to drop away to leave you in a bubble of peace and calmness. The developers of the game have captured this feeling superbly. Okay, maybe that's not true with all the hordes of visitors assaulting you from all sides, but once they have been defeated and the coast is clear, the Tokyo portrayed here does a great service to the city. Rain and darkness change the atmosphere tremendously in real life, making you feel even smaller in a place of giant buildings, where verticality has to be constantly considered. For example, restaurants are generally found in basements or on the first floor, making it virtually impossible to see inside before choosing where to eat, as we generally do in the West. This way of living has been included in the gameplay through a few interesting mechanics that allow players to travel upwards for exploration purposes, rather than tying everything down to street-level activity. This may sound minor, but it is very much in the spirit of Tokyo and it impresses me greatly. Maybe the game takes a while to get going, and unlike the picture-perfect environmental design of the city, the facial graphics are not the best. but it is well worth playing past the first few hours needed to level up your skills. Once combat gets easier due to ability unlocks, everything becomes really interesting. The story is far from standard fare, and I was soon obsessed with cleansing shrines and clearing sections of killer fog from the streets. Being a map game, there is an expected level of grinding to endure, but the varied paranormal side missions and many animal encounters, and the cat shopkeepers are hilarious, mix things up enough to prevent gameplay from becoming stale. As a fan of Hellraiser films, or at least the first 3, I found things such as the puzzle boxes, chains, and various demons reminded me of the world of the Cenobites. A coincidence perhaps, but an interesting one nonetheless. We have waited a long time to play Ghostwire Tokyo on Xbox, but now it is here, and we should celebrate it as a great game. Availability from day one on Game Pass makes this an extremely cheap way to experience the iconic Shibuya crossing for yourself. As a longtime Tokyo enthusiast, I suggest you do. Wrapping things up on my end, Ghostwire Tokyo is finally on Xbox, and of course, it's on Game Pass. Much like Harmonica, I think it features great, fast and fluid combat that takes a little too long to get going. The gorgeous recreation of Japan is hampered by severe performance issues in all but the ugliest graphical mode. But the story is interesting enough to push on through. It might not reach the highs of the studio's title Hi-Fi Rush, but a few games do, and Ghostwire Tokyo is a damned fun game in its own right.